members who are in charge of audio technology tonight. Let's give them a hand. A special thanks to LA School Board member Dr. Ref Rodriguez for making this event possible. And of course, thank you to our, and of course, thank you to our candidates, Wendy Carrillo and Luis Lopez for making this event. Y si hay alguien que necesita audiofonos para transmisión en español, levante sus manos, por favor. Okay, so I will be handing the event over to Mary Lou from the League of Women Voters, who will be our moderator tonight. Let's give Mary Lou a warm thank you.
Thank you. Give me 1 second. So thank you for joining us tonight. I want to thank the beautiful campus of Sotomayor Learning Academies for hosting us. This is definitely more than I could have ever envisioned. And thank you for all the partnering organizations. I want to also thank all the volunteers. So on your way in, you got to interface with voter registration volunteers, ushers. You were able to get some coffee and food. And I also want to point out a lot of the volunteers that we have during our candidate forum. We have ushers here that have vetted the questions, and we also have timers, 2 timers from the League of Women Voters who will be helping the candidates stay on track and let them know when their time has expired. A couple of housekeeping questions before we start. I want you all to kind of think ahead, ask yourself about which issues are most important to you, and jot down if you have any questions. You, of course, already had that opportunity on your way in. If you have any additional questions, we'll do our best. You can always walk up here to the question sorters and submit a question. Additionally, I also want to let you know that there are composed questions that have been written by the organizers. Those will probably be the questions that you'll be hearing at the beginning, and then we'll try to go through as many audience questions as possible. Because my goal here and my duty here is to make sure that you interface with both of these candidates that you'll be casting a ballot for, and that you hear about the public policy issues that matter the most to you, and that it's done in a fair and transparent manner. Of course, if you don't know, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. We don't endorse or oppose candidates. We hold them accountable. So, thank you for joining us tonight. In terms of the ground rules for today's forum, candidates will have 1 minute to respond to all questions. That includes prepared questions and the questions submitted by the audience. Now, unless you hear otherwise, they have 1 minute. We might have to go through kind of like a quick round at the end. We'll gauge to see how we are with our time. There'll be 2 minutes for closing statements, and there'll be no opening statement. The order in which the candidates speak was decided by a draw. We will have Ms. Wendy Carrillo go first, and then we will switch between questions. Both candidates have agreed to these ground rules, and they've been informed and accepted them. We have a tight schedule, so when I introduce the candidates, you're free to make all the noise you want. And then once we get started with the program, I ask that the audience please maintain their silence, hold their applause until the end. All candidates have adhered to the time limits, so let's get ready to learn about the issues. And I want to welcome the candidates for California State Assembly District 51, Wendy Carrillo and Luis Lopez. As soon as I get confirmation from our timekeepers that we're ready to go, we'll proceed. Thank you. So, first question. What do you think is the single largest issue facing Assembly District 51? And what specific steps would you take in your first 6 months to address it? Ms. Carrillo.
Check, check. Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight, and thank you to all the students that are here participating as well. Hope you're all turning 18 soon and going to be able to vote. There's a lot of issues that are facing the 51st Assembly District, whether it's healthcare, access to good schools, education, good jobs. One of the priorities that I've been speaking to with voters has been about education. So how do we improve education access to each and every person from the Northeast to Echo Park to East LA? And that answer is through reforming Proposition 13, which would tax corporations and commercial properties to ensure that we are increasing per pupil spending. We currently spend $13,000 a year on educating our students, while we spend about $76,000 to $79,000 on incarceration. Our priorities as a state are mixed up, and we need to do what we can to ensure that every child has a right to a good school, access to opportunity, and access to a good job when they graduate.
Mr. Lopez, the same question.
So for me, I think one of the greatest issues facing our Assembly District and our state is the issue of healthcare. Our healthcare has been under attack since we've had this new administration and this new Congress. And so we need to make sure that we protect what we have, that we ensure that we can in fact stabilize our marketplace, our Covered California Exchange, that we can keep the number of people that we've covered and continue to move the issue. And I will fight for single-payer coverage here in California. We can be an example for the rest of the country that we can rein in cost. We had a difficult time in this first session, but we can continue to move that, even as we protect the Affordable Care Act and the gains that we've made in the state.
Thank you. For question 2, we'll start with Mr. Lopez. And the question is regarding LA River. In the last 30 years, we've seen dramatic changes occur at the LA River that have created new spaces for the public to gather, and for plant and wildlife to habitat. Public interest in seeing a vibrant restoration of the LA River is ever growing. Can you please share with us your vision for the river's future?
So, you will not have a bigger champion for the LA River than myself. We have built tremendous political will and a vision for this river that I think is one of the most exciting things that we're seeing in our city. And so I will be there to make sure that this is a place where we can recreate, where we have safety and it still serves its purpose as a flood protection channel, that we look at opportunities to build responsibly alongside the river, and that we bring the necessary revitalization and the resources to transform our city and to make this a river we can be proud of.
Thank you. Ms. Carrillo, the same question.
Well, I think that revitalizing the river is pivotal to the future of Los Angeles and the way that we receive our water. Water is a big source of contention in Sacramento, as you may or may not know. And the way in which we talk about the river and the revitalization efforts to remove the current concrete that is blocking the river access is part of the conversation. But in addition to how we will use the river, I want to make sure that communities that have lived alongside the river continue to be able to afford to live here. We want to make sure that we have conversations about housing, about parkways, about recreational life along the river for the families that have been living here for decades. And so that's a big part of the conversation that I need to have with those that are interested in the river revitalization, and ensuring that when we talk about community input, we're actually talking to community that's on the ground every day, that we are using the language that community speaks alongside the river, from Los Angeles all the way down to other assembly districts that want a better future for Los Angeles.
Thank you, Ms. Carrillo. The next question will be for Ms. Carrillo, and this is regarding clean water and environmental protection. LA is recognized as a park-poor metropolitan area, and water quality issues have plagued our region. AB18, the California Clean Water, Climate, and Coastal Protection and Outdoor Access Act for All, authorizes $3 billion to fund parks, water, climate adaptation, coastal protection, and outdoor access programs. The question is, please explain if you support or oppose this measure, and how will you work for its passage or defeat?
I support this measure. In fact, it's actually part of the previous answer that I gave about the LA River. I think when it comes to water issues and revitalization and parks and green space, the AD51st Assembly District is one of the few in Southern California that actually still has green spaces, green hills along Rose Hills, around El Sereno, on Mount Washington. And we have to make sure that when we're having this conversation, we're talking with other legislators across the state as to the importance of what it means to continue to keep green, open spaces for community. The Audubon Center in AD51 is a prime example of how we get that done the right way. And so we're working on ways in which we bring communities of color, non-English speakers into these centers to ensure that we are bringing in vital cultural representation.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez.
Yeah, I absolutely support it, and I have a record of service fighting for our local environment and our local water sources here in our district. I served also on the RVNOC, which is the Parks Oversight Committee, which allocates dollars to recreation facilities and park facilities. So I will be an advocate for clean water and for a clean environment. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Sierra Club and the California League of Conservation Voters because they recognize that in me, I have a record of service fighting for clean air, clean water, and to protect our rivers and our oceans.
Thank you. I'll have to remind the audience to please hold their applause. So the next question is for Mr. Lopez. And this is actually an audience question. Please give the history of your community involvement in District 51.
So, my experience locally goes back 15 years. I have served you locally in a variety of capacities, boards, commissions, nonprofits, you name it. I've been president of the East Area Planning Commission, serving this district for 5 years. I was co-founder of my neighborhood council in Silver Lake, where I served for 5 years. I was, as I mentioned, on the Parks Oversight Committee appointed by then council member Eric Garcetti for 4 years. I today serve with two board members that are here on the board of the Eagle Rock Association, and I've served there for going on 5 years. So I have a long record of service working to improve our communities, and I hope to continue that service and that activism for us in Sacramento. Thank you.
Ms. Carrillo.
I've been working with an organization called HOPE since 2009. HOPE is Hispanas Organized for Political Equality. It's an organization that trains women, Latinas, to join the political landscape. In that, they have a youth mentoring program, which I've been a part of for many years. I've mentored young people, young girls specifically, to believe in themselves, to apply to college, review college applications, statements. As a first-generation American, it's been my experience that our community sometimes needs a little bit of encouragement and courage to be able to be successful. And so I've dedicated my service in that realm. I've had a community radio show for over 10 years where I feature the voices of community leaders across our city, state, and country to ensure that the voices of community are being represented in the media.
Thank you. Our next question also comes from an audience member. What is your view on gun control, and do you plan to support regulations to make it more strict?
That's for me first, right?
Yes, Ms. Carrillo.
I 100% support gun control. I've been a journalist for the past 12 years. In the last 2.5 years, we saw an increased spike in the way in which social media plays a role in continuing to really shed light on how much more we need to do. The fact that about, 2 years ago, Congress did a very historic sit-in led by Representative out in Georgia to make sure that we passed gun control, and yet we didn't do anything. The fact that there was a shooting 2 days ago in Northern California where kids were shot at their school, and we've heard very little about it, says where we are. The fact that people continue to say it's not the guns and there's mental illness is troubling, and I will do everything I can to ensure we do something.
Thank you, Ms. Carrillo. Mr. Lopez.
I absolutely would support additional gun control. We have this problem across this country that we just can't seem to build the political will to control guns and to properly regulate them. Here in California, it's a different game, and I think we have to lead. We have to show that we can and should have strong protections in place, and that we need to keep guns under control and make sure that we're properly regulated, that we have databases that we ensure and know exactly who has guns.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez, this question is for you. Because we're at a school, we'll have two education questions. One is from an audience member that says, what do you think we can do for college students so that they can overcome the challenges between them and the dreams they want to pursue?
Well, a big deal is affordability, and we need to make sure that we have access to community colleges and that we make community colleges free in this state. That is the backbone of our future workforce, and we need to make sure that those opportunities are made available. We also need to make sure that we increase more in-state California students in our university system. That trend has for years gone to more international students. This is a crown jewel of our institution here in California, our UC and Cal State systems, that we need to make sure that more students are coming from California, and we need to create those opportunities, particularly for minority and people of color communities, greater opportunities into our UC and Cal State systems.
Thank you. Ms. Carrillo.
Well, I'm a first-generation college student in the U.S., and I know how challenging it is for many families to try to navigate that system. I think working towards the California Master Plan on Education is priority one. I want to make sure that we're working with the current legislators like Assembly Member Miguel Santiago, who's supporting me in my race, to ensure that we not only make the first year of community college free, but that we work towards college affordability for the second year of community college, and then access to the Cal State system where I went, the UC system as well, and ensuring that undocumented students in our state continue to have access to resources, opportunities to be able to receive the same in-state tuition as their peers. And I think it's incredibly important that we make education a priority, higher education a priority, and apprenticeship programs at the high school level available to ensure that young people have an opportunity to a good job and to a good apprenticeship program if that's the decision and choice that they choose to make.
Thank you. Ms. Carrillo, this question is for you, staying with education. What is your position on public schools versus charter schools? And do you support on strengthening the public school teacher unions?
So I'll clarify that charter schools in California are actually public schools as well. So we got to get outside of the debate of charter versus traditional schools. The 51st Assembly District has the largest number of charter schools in the entire state of California. So yes, I 100% support all schools be union schools, whether it's teachers to classified employees, which are the bus drivers, administrators, and cafeteria workers, have access to organize and unionize and form a union without retribution. I believe that to get ahead of that conversation, this is about money and it's about spending. And again, this is about increasing per pupil spending to ensure that every child, whether it's pre-K to pre-K to 12th grade or even beforehand, has access to a good school, and that parents understand what's at stake when it comes to their child's education.
Mr. Lopez.
Can I ask you to please repeat the question?
Sure, no problem. Thank you for asking. What is your position in regards to the debate, public schools versus charter schools? And furthermore, do you support strengthening school teacher unions?
I fully support our public schools. They are fundamental to opportunity in this state, and I support teachers and I support teacher unions. And in this, you can see a very distinct contrast between myself and my opponent. My opponent has, on record in 2010, has a blog saying that she thinks teachers are essentially, and teachers unions don't represent the interest of the kid. This is a piece that she wrote, and it mimics, it sounds like the language that we hear from Betsy DeVos, right? So our teachers are lazy, our teachers can't be in touch with average 16-year-old students. I believe teachers are fundamental. I've had some of the best teachers that, because of them, because of the time they spent with me, I had tremendous opportunities to go on to private liberal arts college like Pomona College and Harvard University. I will always stand by our teachers.
So if we were not going to attack each other, I'd like an opportunity.
Excuse me, Ms. Carrillo. I was going to reassert one of the ground rules was to not personally, no, you did not invoke Ms. Carrillo's name, but you did invoke some regarding her stance on it. So just because of that, I'll let Ms. Carrillo respond 30 seconds.
30 seconds is certainly not enough time to address the issue, but I will share personally that you are more than welcome to read the entire article and blog post that I wrote on the Huffington Post so that you get a clearer understanding of what I'm talking about. As a proud graduate of local public schools, Harrison Elementary, El Sereno Middle School, and Roosevelt High School, where I actually had the misfortune of dropping out, and it took good teachers and my high school principal to ensure that I graduated. So I urge you to look up my record and to look at the countless amount of teachers within the district that are supporting my race because they know I will be a champion to education for all of our kids.
To the next question, and this is for Mr. Lopez. SB 54 doesn't go far enough to protect immigrants and our communities. Would you support legislation that goes further than state and local and current local enforcement that protects people in our communities from federal immigration authorities?
I will do anything to protect our hardworking immigrant families from these policies at the federal level to rip apart families. It's just absolutely inhumane, and I want to make sure that we provide the resources, the legal resources, the supports necessary for people to be safe and to be protected. I mean, we live in a state where the undocumented immigrant labor is worth about $180 billion to California's economy, and that's a fact that our state controller Betty E. put out. And so our immigrant families, they contribute to our great state, and it's because of them that we have the great industries that we do, and so we need to protect, and I'll be a champion for immigrant families. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carrillo.
Part of being successful in Sacramento and in really any place that you decide to work in is having the right partnerships, and I'm proud to have the endorsement of Senator Kevin De Leon, who actually is the author of that bill in my race for state assembly, and I think that as a formerly undocumented person, I can speak truth to power when it comes on the real fears that families across this district and across this state and across this country are facing when it comes to the attacks by our current federal government and the Trump administration. And as somebody that grew up in this district, I can tell you that I've had plenty of conversations with folks that are currently not in this room, who are afraid to come out, who are afraid of dropping their kids off at school, who are afraid of going to work. And we need to do everything we possibly can to ensure that we are protecting families from being separated, that we are protecting children, that we are working with local law enforcement to ensure that families feel safe and they're able to call in case they are witness to a crime without fear that their legal status is going to be questioned. And that is the type of leader that I plan on being.
Thank you. Our next question is regarding housing. The Ellis Act in 1985 is a law that allows no-fault evictions if landlords want to get out of the rental business or convert a building into condominiums. The law has been used by landlords to evict tenants, even if the standard has not been met. Would you vote to repeal the Ellis Act, or would you like to amend the Ellis Act? If so, what kind of amendments?
This is me, right?
This is for Ms. Carrillo.
Yes, I believe that right now there is a real issue on affordable housing and people that need to stay in their communities, and I think rent control, the Ellis Act, the Contra-Hawkins Act, these are all things that we need to seriously consider on a state level and on a local city level. I lived in Highland Park for many years before I personally was priced out of my own community because I could no longer afford to live there off of Figueroa and Avenue 58, and we know how that community is changing. If I am a professional woman with a good income, I can only imagine what families that are working minimum wage, 2 to 3 jobs to pay their rent, to put food on the table, and really take care of their families are going through. And so as a legislator, my role would be to ensure that from Northeast to East LA to Echo Park, our communities and our families are being served, and then we are working towards ensuring that people that have lived and called LA home are able to stay in the communities that they are living in without fear that they're going to be asked to leave.
Mr. Lopez.
We need to look at all of our housing policies to make sure that we start moving the needle the other way in terms of housing production. We have a situation where about a third of renters, half of renters, spend more than a third of their income in housing, and even then, it's often inadequate housing or doubled up. And so we need to increase the production of affordable housing. That's where my focus is going to be, and I want to make sure that we have the right incentives in place and the right, and that we penalize municipalities, because municipalities have their housing goals, and for years they have not kept up with their responsibilities to build more workforce housing. And so we need to create a system and a framework where we have carrots and sticks, and we penalize when they're falling behind, and we incentivize with resources so that they can create more affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez, this is for you. How will you address the problem of gentrification, which many of us in this room are very concerned about? And this is from an audience member.
Well, gentrification is it's a very tough issue. It's a very macro issue that we're not going to be able to put our hands around, because the forces are just tremendous in terms of economic forces. So there's no easy fix here. But we need to make sure that we create opportunities for folks to stay in the communities that they've called home, in some cases for generations. And that means making sure that they have first right to purchase when they can. It means that we have strong rental protections or tenant protections in place, and yes, we have to continue progress. We can't not allow a coffee shop to come into a certain neighborhood. We can't stop progress. We benefit from progress, we all do, but we need to be careful and thoughtful about the implications on people and on families that have been here for many, many years.
Ms. Carrillo, same question.
So gentrification, like my previous questions, my previous answers is one of the reasons why I was priced out of Highland Park. I think it's important that we talk about gentrification in the real way and how it impacts families, and really how it also impacts business. Currently, the city of Los Angeles doesn't have any ordinance in terms of how do we protect small business owners. I would want to make sure that we're working with the local city councilman, the office of the mayor, to ensure that we're offering opportunities to residents of the districts to ensure that if there are any empty spaces, any empty business corridors, that we are providing opportunities for the people that actually live in that community to thrive, to be successful, to open up a business, to get a small business loan, to ensure that our communities continue to have thriving opportunities, while at the same time addressing the issues of affordability, which at the end of the day really comes down to economic justice. Do people have the right jobs and the right paying jobs and good jobs to ensure that they're able to stay in the communities that they've been living in? And that is part of the conversation that we're certainly not going to address in 30 seconds, but that I hope to be able to build moving forward.
Thank you. Ms. Carrillo, this question is for you first. How do you plan on addressing the homelessness issue within the district?
Great question. Homelessness cannot be discussed without actually addressing the issue of mental illness. And so I want to make sure that we are ensuring that I want to make sure that we're having a conversation with folks, with nonprofit organizations, with those that fund the way in which we treat this issue in a way that's humane, that addresses the needs, that is not just what we see on Skid Row, but the fact that affordability is also causing families to become homeless. Children who are living in cars, who go to sleep without food in their bellies, because they don't have a place to stay. Again, this is an issue of income inequality and ensuring that we are providing the best resources on a municipal, on a state, and on a federal level with all of our partners to address the issue of homelessness. And when it comes to the 2020 census, that we are ensuring that despite the changes in downtown and the homelessness community going into various different neighborhoods, that everyone is counted.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez.
I am a very big supporter of a housing first approach to address our homelessness crisis. And we need to fundamentally get people into housing, because then we can address the issues of substance abuse, issues of mental health, whatever supports we need to get people back on their feet. And other cities have done this with great success. I know that the city of Seattle, for instance, they cite numbers like $35 per night to have somebody in basic shelter housing, whereas it costs $135 per night to have someone in a local jail, $2,000 per night to have them in an inpatient psychiatric facility, and $4,000 if you're looking at the costs associated with having someone overnight at a hospital. So let's get folks in the cheapest way into a stable housing environment, build around the services to get them what they need so that they can get back on their feet, training.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez.
Thank you.
The next question is for you, Mr. Lopez. Can you please discuss your strategies to help grow our state economy and create jobs?
I think what we need to do is make sure that, I think small businesses are a big part of that. I think we need to create environments where they can operate, because that's where most of the jobs come, are small businesses. So let's make sure that they have the right tools, the right opportunities, the right environment for them to start new businesses and to prosper. I think that's the future. That's what we need to make sure that we create opportunities. And we have sort of incubators that can help folks that are interested in starting new businesses do just that. And so I think that's a big part of it. And we've been doing well so far. Our economy has been stable and healthy, but we need to make sure that the underpinnings are going to be there for continued prosperity, because we know fundamentally our economy is cyclical. So at some point we're going to be in darker times, but we need to make sure that we offer the right tools and the right regulatory environment so that businesses can prosper.
Thank you. Ms. Carrillo.
I'm proud to have the endorsement of the Southern California Building Trades, which actually create incredible good jobs across our community. I've been learning about the apprenticeship programs, in terms of also the apprenticeship programs that they also have for veterans coming back into our community. I want to make sure that, let me share this. Right now, 30% of the construction being done in Los Angeles is towards affordable housing. Only 1% of that is going toward good union jobs. If we were to even increase that to 3%, can you imagine the amount of people that we would put to work tomorrow? That is possible if we're working with the chamber, with developers, and with community partners to ensure that the young men and women of our district, those that are currently seeking employment, have access to apprenticeship programs and opportunities that will grant them good paying jobs while learning a trade, which is a lifelong skill. That's something that I plan on doing.
Thank you. The next question is for Ms. Carrillo. What will you do to keep big businesses inside California while also balancing for them to pay their fair share in taxes?
I think there's a huge opportunity for corporations in California to be leaders across our nation and across our state in ensuring that people are being employed, that they are paid their fair share in taxes, that they are part of a thriving California that makes us the 6th largest economy in the world. This is something that California should be proud of. There is absolutely no reasons why corporations that pay their fair share, that are employing countless workers across our state, shouldn't feel incentivized to stay in our state and to be part of a thriving state that understands the direction of our country and how to build and be a global power.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez.
Well, I think that this conversation that we've heard over the course of the last several years about the flight of certain industries out of our state is more media hype than not. I mean, the reality is the instances of large corporations actually moving out of the state are pretty few and far between. Yes, we have challenges. Our housing crisis is a big problem because you need to have a stable workforce that can actually get to their employers. You have situations in some part of our state that people are taking on 2-hour commutes to get to good paying jobs, but they can't afford to live next to their jobs. So those are significant challenges, but at the end of the day, we have opportunities to build more housing, and we have land, we have resources, we have talent, and it's all those things that make corporations stay, and we need to continue to insist that corporations do pay their fair share, because we need to invest in our future, we need to invest in our infrastructure, and there's far too many corporate tax loopholes that they are able to take advantage of.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. This question is for you. The state of California has habitually ignored massively unfunded pensions. What are your thoughts on addressing the pension system in California and in the district?
Well, we need to first of all honor the contracts, the promises that we made to our workers, first and foremost. So those, when we have teachers and public sector workers that entered into a work arrangement and we agreed that we're going to provide a defined pension benefit, we need to honor that. We can't go back on the commitments that we made to our workforce. People rely on that, they plan for that, and we need to make sure that we honor that. At the same time, yes, we're going to at some point have to grapple with the cost of that. And so that's why I say that corporations, I mean, we're talking about an administration that's currently trying to lower the tax rate, and that's the opposite of what we should be doing. We need to make sure that the taxes that they pay are appropriate for what they're getting to fully fund our state and our liabilities. So that's where I think we need to have a serious conversation.
Thank you. Ms. Carrillo?
Any attack on pensions is an attack on workers, period. We need to make sure that we are a state that values the hard work of men and women who have dedicated their lives to the fact that we get to live a better life. Whether it's state employees, teachers, police officers, firefighters, these are all folks that every day do their job to make sure that the rest of us are able to thrive in our communities. Understanding pensions is about understanding the budget, and it's about understanding the way in which people come to the table to ensure that folks are just being taken care of for the sacrifices that they've made to serve our state. They are public servants. And so we need to switch the conversation so that we're talking, one, about accountability, transparency, ensuring that California continues to be a state in which workers thrive, and where we don't look at the issue of pensions as a way to scapegoat the fact that we are balancing the budget on the backs of working families across the state. That is my commitment to all workers in California.
Thank you. This question is for Ms. Carrillo. We have a lot of teens in the audience. So what are your thoughts on helping to combat substance abuse, particularly to preventing young teens from getting caught in that cycle?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
Sure. What are your thoughts or your vision on helping prevent teens from getting caught in the cycle of substance abuse?
Thank you. Well, part of the answer to that is simply understanding. So when you're connected to young people, when you understand what it means to struggle in this community and across our city, to know that maybe some teenagers from single-parent households, the fact that because of the violence our city has experienced for decades and the fact that this community has experienced that, we've made trauma a very normal part of our existence. What happens in the Northeast or in East LA is not common in more wealthier, affluent communities. So we need to make sure that schools are funded so that we have school psychologists, so that we have more counselors, so that we have more educators, to ensure that kids have folks that they can go to where they can have trust and build relationship. Sometimes I understand that you're not able to talk to your parent, which is why you look to teachers, you look to educators, your high school principal, your school nurse, to make sure that you have someone to talk to. And as a legislator, I make a commitment to ensure that schools are funded so that you have that.
Thank you, Ms. Carrillo. Mr. Lopez.
Well, I think what's critically important is that we have publicly funded programs that are after-school programs, programs like the Upward Bound program, which I participated in as a young person. These are what I call our pathways to opportunity, and we need them in our local schools, in our local communities, so that kids have recreational opportunities, they're engaged, and they're not exposed and not hooked on substances at its early age. I mean, I have my own personal experience, growing up in the city of El Monte, where half the kids dropped out of high school, and in fact, my 2 older brothers dropped out of high school. One of them got involved in substance abuse, local gangs, and so forth. And so these are realities oftentimes in our neighborhoods that I know are fully preventable if we just invest the time, the resources in programs that work. And we know which ones those are, we just have to have the will to fund them.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. This question is for you. What will you do to overcome the current obstacles that the construction of the bullet train is facing? And in that question, are you in support of the construction of the bullet train? Yes or no?
I am in support of a bullet train. I think that it's the future of California. I think we need that sort of bold infrastructure project to deal with the tremendous increase of population that we're seeing in our state. We're expecting something like 250 million people in this great state by 2050. And so we need that sort of infrastructure. It will create jobs, and it will be a tremendous boost to our economy. Now the challenges to it, of course, are technical in some respects, right? But they're also about how we plan for it. Where is it? What communities is it going to go through? And that's going to be localized challenges, and we're going to need to find. We're going to need to negotiate. We're going to need bridge builders to get communities together and to get agreement on what path that the bullet train should go. But I'm fully in support, and I can't wait to see it get started.
Thank you. Ms. Carrillo, same question.
I'm in support of the bullet train. I think it's going to create lots of really good jobs across our entire state, good union jobs at that. I'm proud to have the endorsement of Congresswoman Lucille Roybal-Allard, who actually has some concerns about the bullet train that we've discussed in terms of the communities that are going to be impacted. And Congresswoman Roybal-Allard and the 51st share the same district. So I want to make sure that we're having conversations with people within the community to ensure that we're not just building, but that we're taking into account environmental impact studies, noise, pollution, to make sure that we're not taking advantage of communities that are not often at the table where those conversations are being had, and so that we are bringing the voices of everyone into the fold to ensure that when we build a prosperous California, it's not just for some, but it's for all of us.
Thank you. Ms. Carrillo, this question is for you. We've heard about affordable housing tonight. One aspect of the housing crisis also is public transit. What would you do to improve public transit or the capacity of our roads in order to be accommodating to the additional residents in our community?
Well, I grew up on public transit when our bus routes were RTDs and now they're MTAs. And I think part of the challenge is ensuring that when we're using public transit, it's reliable and gets us to where we need to be on time. Part of the issue is also infrastructure. So if you ever take a bus across the city of Los Angeles, you are often on a different side of the street where you need to catch it, and sometimes I've seen, maybe you've seen this too, people run to catch the bus because it's not at a place at a good location. So we need to look at infrastructure. We need to make sure that we are continuing to support the metro expansion, which now takes us all the way to Santa Monica. And what was it, 10 years ago, we got the Blue Line that took us all the way to Long Beach. So we are slowly building, and it takes time. But I think with the right conversations, the right partnerships, and most importantly, with federal dollars coming into California and into our state, we can make it happen.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez.
I think we need to continue planning around development, around transportation corridors. I think that we need to be smart about how we use our streets, and that they're multimodal, that we truly are serving not just vehicles, but cyclists, pedestrians. We've had some great examples of that. In fact, I participated with my colleagues on the Eagle Rock Association. We saw great improvements on Colorado Boulevard. And so I think we're seeing now some on Eagle Rock Boulevard, by the way. Yes, more density along that route, but let's make sure that we also have affordable units in them. Let's make sure that those improvements are happening in different parts of the neighborhood as well. So I want to make sure that we continue to encourage more development right alongside transportation corridors. I think that's going to help mobility, that's going to help people live closer to work and get to where they need to be faster.
Thank you. This question is for you, Mr. Lopez, and I think we can all agree the importance of civil discourse, being able to gather with different views but still have a conversation. So this question is in that spirit. From the audience, due to the increase of intolerance and lack of civil discourse, what will you do to, one, support free speech, but also control any hate speech?
But also, I'm sorry?
So the question is, at the heart, what will you do to promote the freedom of speech, but at the same time control hate speech?
Control hate speech. Well, listen, we live in a very unique circumstance. What we're seeing at the national level is just in many ways horrific. And so I think we need here in California to again lead when it comes to our civic discourse, when it comes to protections for immigrants, for the LGBT community, for transgender community. I mean, these are conversations that we need to have. We need to make sure that they're honest conversations about what we're doing to respect people's rights and people's rights to fully participate in our democracy. I will be a champion to do just that and to hit the right notes in doing that. I have a long history of working for immigrant and LGBT civil rights. I started the first LGBT Latino Political Action Committee, and I'll continue to push the envelope.
Thank you. Ms. Carrillo.
Well, let me make something very clear. Hate speech is not free speech, point blank, period. What we need to do is ensure that we have fierce champions on all levels of government, whether it's the city, whether it's the state, whether it's Congress, to ensure that we are fighting every day for working families and for people of color across the entire state of California. I'm proud to have the endorsement of Congresswoman Karen Bass, who just took to task the fact that the Black community is being persecuted by the Justice Department. I've been a strong supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. I think that we need to make sure that communities feel safe. As a journalist for 12 years, we are seeing right now what it means to have our First Amendment be stripped away of its power, with a president who continues to tweet that news and journalists are not doing their jobs and should not be trusted. When we live in a country that no longer values free speech, we no longer have a free country. When we don't have access to a free press, we lose our independence and our ability to think. So I would be a champion of all these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. This is for Ms. Carrillo. Where do you stand on Senate Bill 562, the single-payer health care bill? If you support it, can you tell us specifically how would you fund it?
I support the idea of single payer, and I think that California needs to work towards having universal health care. Right now, the bill was put into a committee by the speaker for having some flaws on its funding, for not being a bill that is entirely supported by everyone. For example, I'm proud to have the endorsement of the California firefighters, who told me that because of the work that they do, a lot of firefighters actually get cancer throughout their career. SB 562 hasn't addressed some of the workers across our state that risk their lives every day to make sure that we are living our best lives. These are workers that need to be protected. So while I support the idea, and quite frankly, I would have liked to have seen a vote on the State Assembly floor, and this is a conversation that I've actually have had with the Speaker, because I think on a more strategic level, there's a big difference between progressive Democrats and moderate Democrats and those who make bills not move forward. But I look forward to having that conversation once I'm in the Assembly.
Mr. Lopez.
I fully support moving to single payer. Yes on 562, and yes, I'm getting us there. There is no reason that we can't get this done here in California. And with respect to the financing is there. We know that overall this will be a cheaper system if and when we have the political will to get it done. Our challenge is going to be at the federal level to get the feds at some point when we win back the Congress and we win back the House, the White House, that we can actually repurpose our state dollars and our federal dollars, our Medicaid dollars, to use that for our single-payer system. I have worked in the healthcare space for nearly my entire professional career, and so I have the expertise to lead us in that direction, and I can't wait to do it with this speaker and with leadership in both houses. Thank you.
Mr. Lopez, what will you do to protect a woman's right to choose?
Passion for me to protect women's reproductive rights and the ability to choose for themselves what they want to do, what they choose to do with their bodies. So this is an issue that I am very Planned Parenthood across the country, from the attacks that we're seeing at the federal level, this just completely unfounded notions of that all they do is abortions, and there's such an array of services that they provide, cervical screenings, breast cancer, et cetera, screenings. And so we need to make sure that they are there for women that need them across the state and across the country, and I'll do everything I can to do just that.
Thank you. Ms. Carrillo.
I 100% support the right for a woman's right to choose. As a woman, this is a very clear indication of where we are as a country. And if I were to serve as your assembly member, what I can tell you is that the legislature is already doing work to ensure that we are putting money aside so that clinics that actually do the work are actually funded, despite what the Trump administration chooses to do. The services that are provided for women serve women of color, serve the most needy, serve families, serve children. And this is more than just about choice. This is about our values as a country, as a society, the value that we put on a woman's ability to make their own choices. The fact that we have men across the country making decisions for women is a problem. This is the lowest number of women that we've had in the state legislature in close to 20 years. We can change that.
Thank you. Ms. Carrillo, what steps do you plan to take to ensure that constituents, like the audience here today, can have access to your office and FaceTime with you?
Thank you for that question. I'm actually really looking forward to building a really great coalition of neighborhood supporters and groups across our district. Again, this is an incredibly large district from Northeast to East LA to Echo Park to parts of Silver Lake, and it all needs representation. There are various languages that are spoken across this district, and I think it's important to have cultural representation across the board. I wish that, we would have all the money in the world to be able to hire each and every language available across our district, and I hope that we get to that point. But I think being open, being honest, being transparent, ensuring that folks in our community know where our offices are will be a first step, and ensuring that we can have public forums and information available that's culturally relevant, that's language competent to the various different communities across the 51st.
Mr. Lopez, same question.
Well, I look forward to being having a very responsive office to work with many of you, and many of you who I have worked with. You know how to get a hold of me, and that's exactly how I want to continue to operate in the legislature, is to make sure that you know how to get a hold of me, that you can get a hold of me, and that I can hear directly from you the issues, the local issues that you're seeing, even if they're not directly impacted, and maybe perhaps the city council office is the most direct route to a solution to those issues. I still want to be accessible. And by the way, I want to be accessible to the communities, especially in the southern part of this district, in East LA, in El Sereno, in Lincoln Heights, in areas that have not always gotten as much attention as some of the other neighborhoods north of the 110. So I will be there to make sure that we have plenty of representation, that staff is responsive and there and engaged just as much as other parts of the district.
Thank you. Now, this is our last public policy question, and before we head into the closing statements. And it's regarding climate change, and this is, we'll begin with Mr. Lopez. The federal government leadership currently is in denial of climate change and hostile to conservation efforts. How will your office ensure that California continues on its path and strives in terms of environmental issues?
I hope to be a strong leader when it comes to continuing our push to renewables. I think we need to remain absolutely aggressive to meeting our goals of going 100% to renewables by 2045. I think it's doable. I think we need to continue to push in that direction and lead across the state with respect to our commitment to combating global warming. It's real, we know it's real, and we can do it here. I am proud, as I mentioned, to have the support of the Sierra Club and of the California League of Conservation Voters. I'm proud of the local work that I've done, rolling up my own sleeves to work to get a single-use plastic bag ban in place. I worked with local leaders. I started the Latino Coalition Against Plastic Waste. And I look forward to pushing the envelope further so that we also eliminate other polluting polystyrene that pollutes our oceans and our rivers. We can go to biodegradable forms of packaging. We need to continue to push on that regard too.
Thank you. Ms. Carrillo, same question.
Well, climate change and environmental issues are incredibly important to our community. On the east side, we have the issue of Exide. Exide has been polluting our community for a long time, and we need to make sure that our low-income communities of color have access to a great area. And the fact is, we currently don't. And so as a legislator, I want to make sure that we have the funding available so that we are able to clean that community. I'm proud to have the endorsement of Senator Kevin De Leon, who is the author of SB 100, which will make sure that we are pushing renewable energy to 100% by 2045. We got to make sure that we continue to bring people into the fold so that we are creating renewable green jobs so that California can lead the way when it comes to environmental protections. Cap and trade is an example of good policy across our state that can definitely go further. So as your legislator, I hope that I can build relationships with legislators that share this vision and progressive values so that we are continuing to move California as a beacon, as an example for the rest of the country. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll do one really quick question before we go into our closing statements, and it's a fun one, so you could relax. And we'll start with Ms. Carrillo. If someone were to play you on a film, a documentary about your campaign, who would it be?
You know, what's funny is that I was just having this conversation with someone just out of pure imagination. And I couldn't think of someone. I would hope that it would be a Latina. Maybe wishful thinking, Jennifer Lopez or America Ferrera. Haven't really thought of someone yet.
Mr. Lopez?
I wish I could play along here, but I'm just stumped. I can't think of a single person.
All right, well,
That's a great question.
thought I'd lighten it up. You haven't gotten that one, right? All right, so we'll go into our closing statements, and Ms. Carrillo, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for being here tonight and for spending your evening with us. My name is Wendy Carrillo, and it would be my honor to represent you as the next Assemblywoman of the 51st District here in Los Angeles. This is a community where I grew up in. I grew up on just the other side of the hill in City Terrace. I'm a proud first-generation American who is formally undocumented. My parents work really hard. They're hard immigrant working parents to ensure that myself and my 4 younger sisters had access to opportunity, to good schools, and that we gave back to our community. I'm very honored to call this district home. It's what I've known all of my life. And I'm proud to have the endorsements of SEIU California, the Federation of Labor, over 800,000 workers across our state, the Democratic Legislative Women's Caucus, who is fighting the good fight of ensuring that more women are elected into office. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the California League of Conservation Voters, who also believe that my record on environmental protections serves this community. If elected, I would want to make sure that we are working on opportunity, equity, justice, that we are increasing per pupil spending, that we are ensuring that every child in the 51st District and really the state of California has the best access to an education and to STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. These are the jobs of right now. But we need to make sure that we are giving those opportunities for the next generation. We don't need to continue to import workers. We have plenty of workers in our state. So we need to make sure that we are fighting to make sure that everyone in this room has access to that opportunity and to making the American dream a reality for everyone, not just a few.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. 2 minutes.
Well, I want to thank you all for your time and for having us here and for your consideration. I have been serving you locally for nearly 15 years, as I said, and I believe at this point in time, when we have seen at the federal level that experience matters, that we need somebody that has experience working on local issues, that has been engaged in our communities, on local fights like fighting the Shoal Canyon dump, the proposed expansion above the Eagle Rock, which I work with many of you, many neighbors, many organizations to oppose that dump. I've worked on local issues. I've worked to improve our communities at the most local levels, on the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council and so many other boards and commissions. I've put in my time. I care deeply about our community, and I think that right now you need the combination of grassroots activism, political know-how, and training. And I have public policy training. That's exactly what I got my master's degree in at Harvard University, and I want to put it to good work for you. I'm proud to have the endorsements of State Controller Benny He, former Assemblywoman Jackie Goldberg, the National Union of Healthcare Workers, NUHW, Southern California ADA, and hundreds of community leaders throughout our district, many of whom I work with intimately for many, many years. And so I hope to earn your vote. I thank you for your consideration. I look forward to fighting to make sure that we have single payer in California, that we pass 562, that we have affordable housing and low-income housing and workforce housing to accommodate the residents of the state, that we address our homelessness crisis, and that we have strong environmental protections that lead the way across the state and for this country. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to both of our candidates. One last reminder, Election Day is December 5th. Polling places are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Make sure you're registered to vote. If you change your address or relocated, change your name in the last couple of months, make sure you re-register. If you need a vote by mail ballot, make sure you submit your request by November 28th. Thank you very much.